Chris Nanos joined the Pima County Sheriff's Department as a corrections officer. He quickly augmented the department with his subject matter expertise in criminal and narcotics investigations. In 2015, he was appointed by the Pima County Board of Supervisors. He was victoriously elected in 2020 as the 35th sheriff of Pima County. The sheriff is primarily responsible for preserving the peace and safety in all the unincorporated areas of Pima County. He is also fiscally responsible for a multi-million-dollar budget. His department is comprised of nearly 1,400 employees and complemented by over 400 volunteers. Sheriff Nanos, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I appreciate you having me. I'll go over just a couple of things real quickly, what's going on within the department and what we've done and moving forward where we're at. We came in here in 2021 and really didn't know what we were faced with when we first got here. We'd been told that there was no COVID cases at our jail, and then we found out on day one that there were over 800 COVID cases in our jail. We learned that staffing was really critical. We're down 150 some corrections officers and close to 40 or I think it was 48, maybe 50 deputies. Those numbers are staggering because it takes a long time to, if hiring is at a normal, whatever normal is, if we could hire and recruit and retain on a normal basis, it still takes us 40 weeks to train a deputy to get them out on the street into a car. It takes us 23 weeks to train a corrections officer and get him into a pod. If your attrition rate is at, for example, corrections were 6 when we came in, my goodness, that's losing 3 correction officers a week. Deputies were at almost 4, that's losing almost 2 a week. Nobody, and this is not on the past administration, nobody could have predicted what we ran into in terms of hiring. That's across the nation. The labor market still struggles. We're hopeful we've turned a corner. We've had some rather large academy classes of some 40, 50 deputies and some as many as 30, 40 corrections officers. You have to understand, though, if retention is good, good would be 2 deputies a pay period, so 1 a week. That still means you have to hire 40 and keep all 40 in that academy for the next 40 weeks just to break even. We came in here with such a great deficit, somewhere close to 30% staffing levels. And that impacted us in tremendous ways, in morale, in dollars. You got to pay overtime. I don't have a choice. If I have a pod that needs to have a corrections officer in it and I can't staff it, then I've got to mandate overtime. And that's really tough on my team. But we think we've reached a turning point. We hope we have. We're starting to see more numbers get better. I think when we first started here, we had academy classes as big as 7. That you're just working in the negative. But to spend 40 weeks to train 7 people all the time, you're losing 1 a week. You're just not going to ever get ahead. But now today, we're seeing some rather large classes, 50, 60 members in these classes, which brings on additional problems. Where do we train them? If I don't have a training center large enough to hold that many, my goodness, I've got to rent a hall out or something. So there's a lot of challenges, and my team's doing a great job in meeting those challenges. We've actually blended our academies. We recognize that correction officers, they obtain some skill sets that, well, that's where I started. You cannot believe what they put up with and deal with and how they handle themselves in an environment where there's no weaponry other than their ability to communicate. That's their weapon. They're in an environment of 70, sometimes as many as 250 inmates with 1 CO in there, or 4 COs in the case of 250. But that's a lot of people to monitor and keep safe and keep yourself safe and do it in such a professional manner with very little training. And we're hiring at young ages, 18, 19 years old. So we've started to see that corner turn as well. I think by blending our academies, taking what we know works for our corrections officers, that ability to de-escalate situations, ability to gain that sixth sense and look at situations and be problem solvers. We know that those skill sets, we want them in the streets as well. So we are putting our deputies through the same academy that our corrections officers go through. It gives us some staffing levels at the corrections facility until our deputies do get the full training, because like I say, there's this 40 some weeks where we have now been able to pare down our corrections officers to 16 weeks. It gives them some time to still grow and learn, but yet help out in the corrections facilities. So it's been a challenge, but we're getting there. I think when we first came in, we had sometimes as many as 20 or 30 applicants, yet we had over 150 jobs. And when we test those 30 applicants, we'd see 5 show up for the test. Those numbers are now, we're starting to see 200 or 300 applicants, and we're starting to see 100 to 150 show up for testing. So those are good numbers. Again, it's still, there's quite a background check that's required, which is another reason we get our deputies on board early, because you could apply to be a deputy, but it could take us literally 6 months to do your background. So if you're a young man or young lady who wants a job, we take your application, but it's 6 months later before you even can start with us. We're losing you, because who can afford to not work for 6 months? So they go to other places and apply and do other things. So we've recognized that the background for a correction officer isn't as lengthy, isn't required as much. Those are they're statutory obligations that we have to meet for those backgrounds, but a corrections officer isn't as great as that as a deputy. So we can get you employed within weeks of that application versus where before it would take 6 months. So we get you into our hands where we can shape and mold you as we'd like to. And then from there, we get you trained up and do our backgrounds while you're working at the jail. And then from there, move you into a position of a deputy. It's a challenge. That's just one of many. The bigger challenge that we're looking at too is a new jail. I think you've all heard there's a big push right now that the jail has some maintenance issues, and this maintenance was deferred from years back, and all these things. I don't want to point my fingers backwards. I want to look at what are we faced with. And so we've got a blue ribbon commission to come in and study the jail. This commission is made up of members from all walks of life, to include construction. I can go in and tell you, boy, this place is a wreck, but I couldn't tell you what it takes to fix it. That takes engineers. And so we've hired, the wrong word. We put people on that commission from places like Sun Corporation. There's another builder in there who builds homes. He's in there. We've got correctional experts, people who understand the sciences behind correctional institutes. We've got people in there from who have been with social services, an actual minister. We've got retired corrections, people with master's degrees in that arena, just a number of people, other community leaders that will sit there and go and look at the jail and see it and decide, can we fix it? Do we need to knock it down, build a new one? Can we modify? But that's up to those guys. They're the experts. I'm trying my best to stay out of it because I don't want to have an influence on them. I myself personally believe we need a new jail. But my point is not because of this one's falling down. The repairs and throwing good money after bad, those cost issues, the experts will tell you that. My take on this whole thing is simply this. When we built the first jail in 1984, it was called a direct supervision facility. And it was designed to provide the safest way possible to keep not just your staff safe, but those inmates safe, and provide a humane service to everybody that was in your facility. What we've done since that time, in 84, it was state of the art. I was part of that. And I'll tell you, when I came in 84, the old jail was, if you could imagine, was from ceiling to floor, a big open bay area of bars. Bars went completely around it. And there was one cell with bars all the way around and maybe 100 to 200 inmates bunked in that cell. And then you had another cell and an A, B, C, D cells. And the CO, the guard, would walk around that cell every prescribed time, 30 minutes, 45, whatever the time was required at that time, would walk all the way around that cell. Those inmates would throw things at the CO would throw things back. It was just a zoo. And you'd walk around and then you'd go to the next cell, walk around, and then you went back to your office and sat there and waited. And the reality was those inmates sat there and knew exactly when you were coming, and they looked at their watch, said, okay, he'll be here in 30 seconds. They waited. And so it was really a matter of who is running that jail, who's in control. And we realized quickly that the person in control of that jail was the person who had the most cigarettes. The guy who could manipulate the inmates the best was that individual who had what that inmate needed. And we decided that's not the way this should work. And so we decided to build pods. So instead of bars, we built these 12-inch concrete walls and put the corrections officer in the middle of that pod, those correctional walls, with, at the time, was 36 inmates. It quickly doubled when they double bunked it to 70-some inmates. That CO controlled the pod. He had the cigarettes. Everything they needed, they went to the CO for. He met their needs. He was in control. It made for a safer environment. We knew that worked. Progressed 40 years later, and here we are today, and we found out that what's gone on from then is we've moved away from that science. We've gone to an era, dormitory style, basically 250 men and women in pods with one or two COs in there to watch them. Sometimes you have one CO watching two pods. So he has to go and make his rounds every 15, 20 minutes by 70 some inmate rooms and go to the next pod and do it again. It's going to take him 20 minutes just to do that alone, to go around each pod and still provide the service. Direct supervision, the best way I can describe it to you is simply this. Picture a babysitter in your home. You have a babysitter in your home, and the babysitter chooses to use a baby monitor, sits at the TV in the living room and has that baby monitor while the baby's asleep in another bedroom. And every now and then, every 15, 20 minutes, that baby monitor might go off, may not, and the babysitter goes and opens that door up about 2-3 inches, peeks in, everything's okay, goes back to watching TV, playing Nintendo, whatever. Or you can have that babysitter in the room, forget the baby monitor, the babysitter is right there with the baby 24/7, which is the safest way. We know it works. We know that direct supervision works. What we've done is we built a facility that doesn't provide the opportunity to give that best, safest process, direct supervision, a chance. When you have 250 people in one pod, a large room with 2, 3, 4 COs, there is no way that you can watch everybody in there. They huddle off in a corner, they hide things, they do, it's not safe. I look at a prison, and you can Google it. There's a prison in Australia. They actually, our pods are set up where we have 18 doors downstairs, 18 doors upstairs, and that whole big pod, and you put 6, 7, 8 people in those rooms sometimes. In those rooms, those doors are locked shut until you decide to let them out. We let them out sometimes because staffing's so low, less than 2 hours a day. So again, who's in control? Those 8 people locked in a room that has a door, a steel door that has a window about 4 inches wide and maybe 2 feet tall, and that corrections officer goes and he peeks in that window every 20, 30 minutes as best he can and wanders to the next one. How secure, how safe is that? Who, those 8 inmates in that room, who's in charge? Again, we've given it back to the inmate. That is not the way it should be done. You look at what we have in Australia, their example was they have, again, just a big open bay. There are no doors. There are no cells. Picture an office building that has cubicles. They come up about this high. There's no doors on them. It's just an L-shaped cubicle. You have a bunk bed here and you have your desk with your monitor that can be used for watching TV or visitation or anything you need. It's all right there in your room. But it's open and it's an open bay. And the CO is right there. He can look down and see everybody in that bay area. And he can monitor it and watch it without any closed doors, without having to look through a little window and check on things. And more importantly, cost. We are estimating a new jail might run us as much as $400 million. This type of facility would have none of those doors. You would have cubicles that today we could spend maybe $10,000, $15,000 to build out a cubicle office room of what I have downstairs in my detective's bay, probably 400, 500, 600 square foot. Nothing but cubicle bays, no doors, no nothing. You spend that versus 12-inch thick walls that has rebar that's rusting throughout the facility. You have busted pipes. In fact, to fix the busted pipes, they're not sure where they're at in that concrete wall. So I have video where they literally punched holes in the concrete trying to find the leaks. And you got 4 or 5 holes and then they finally find it. Or you have doors, steel doors that cost you $18,000 a door every time it needs replaced. Or you have a lock, just a deadbolt lock that you might go to your house and pay, I don't know, go to Ace, $15, $10. Our deadbolt locks are $1,800. It gets crazy after a while. It's like, why do I need 12-inch thick concrete walls? When was the last time we saw any inmate scratch his way out of a prison or a jail cell? Those are old type systems. I don't think that's necessary. Maybe on your perimeters you do, but interior, you can build it cheaper. Again, that's getting out of my expertise area. We'll let the experts look at that and tell us what is or isn't practical. But I'll say this. We have done tours of that facility with Board of Supervisor members, those members who are willing to take it, all kinds of political figures to include the city council and others, news media and everybody. And then some of these, in fact, most of them have come in there very skeptical about, that's going to cost a lot of money. I don't need a new jail. Maybe we can fix it. And they walk through that tour and the sheriff is nowhere near there. I don't want to influence them. And they go through and come out, and every single one of them come out and have said, you need a new jail. I don't want to spend that kind of money either. I'd rather see my taxpayers' money go to new roads and parks, maybe a swimming pool or libraries, things we'd really enjoy. But every half a century or so, you might need to build a new jail. I think it's time. And again, that's my next big push. We've done a lot of things in terms of transparency with our critical incident teams and reviewing incidents of officer-involved shootings where we turn it over to another outside agency in a regional effort. We've done some things regionally where we're going to be doing active shooter training where every school in the county, we have 11 school districts in this county, and all 11 superintendents of those districts came and met in our office, in my office, with the chief of police, Chad Kasmar, not myself, talking about how we could do better with keeping our kids safe. And we decided that we need to be all on the same page. We don't want what Uvalde had, pointing fingers to everybody's fault. No, we need to know, and they need to know what we expect of them and what they should be able to expect of us. One thing that we definitely all agree on is law enforcement's a tough and dangerous job, and maybe there's a bank robbery in progress. So we get in the area and we wait for backup and then we go in. But an active shooter, we can't do that. We need to address the threat immediately. I wish I had the ability to wait for backup on those cases. You don't. Every time that trigger's pulled, lives are going. And so we need to make sure our teams know there is no hesitation. You get there, you go and address the threat. We're working training all across the county that way. We are working on a system similar where you get the silver alerts or weather alerts. We're going to do an active shooter alert for law enforcement personnel only. Because as I'm short-staffed, Tucson Police is short-staffed, Marana, Oro Valley, everybody's facing the same things. Collectively together, we're a force multiplier, and we know that. And so oftentimes I could be driving right by a school in the city and not know what's going on. So we're putting together those kinds of things where we can all be alerted immediately. There's over 4,000, almost 5,000 Border Patrol agents in the area. How quick could they get there? The other things is we look at how well equipped are we. My team is well equipped with AR-15 type weapon to meet a threat. You don't want the sheriff going in with his little pistol, meeting somebody with a machine gun, right? I don't want my deputies doing that either. Tucson Police recognizes that, where they used to have maybe one or two officers on the street armed with such capacity, they are now getting more firepower for their officers as well. Schools, we turn to the schools. They too need to be checking what they have for equipment. We carry what we call IFAKs. They're first aid kits that it's more than a Band-Aid or an aspirin, which what you might find in a school nurse's office. We got tourniquets and gauzes and things that are used to plug bullet holes to save lives. We know that we lost a lot of lives in Uvalde because there wasn't proper first aid kits or measures there. And the training and the costs, all of those things are things we look at. More important to me is we brought this group of superintendents into this office, and Chief Kazmar and myself were a little bit astounded by the fact that was the first time ever that those 11 superintendents had been in a room together, where we, as law enforcement leaders, all of the chiefs, myself, we meet regularly, if not monthly, even more. But we're always talking, we're always engaging. In fact, I'm really very impressed by the fact that all of us get along so well. And we look at each other to solve problems, and we work it for no other reason than to just provide a better public safety to our communities. So all of that, there's so much in my head. We've got body-worn cameras, we've got budgets. You're going to hear a lot about the deficits that the sheriff's had, and is he underfunded? Is he mishandling his budget? All of those things will come up. I'm going to address the board. They've asked me, I was gone last week, but they've asked me to come and speak with them about my being over my budget. I'll say this right up front. Clearly, we every day look at our budget and try the best we can to find a way to make things work and do so as fiscally responsibly as possible. But there's a lot of things out there that occur in this budget that the general public doesn't know. And I just believe that we'll clear that up with the board on the 11th, I believe, is when I go to them. But it's real clear. But inflation impacts all of us. It doesn't just impact my wife when she goes to the grocery stores. We buy eggs too for our jail. We buy bread and milk, gas and fuel and cars and vehicles, everything. Inflation has a big impact on us as well. And you'll hear more about that. It's being short-staffed. I don't have the luxury to say, oh, no problem. I don't need to put somebody at the jail. I don't need to answer that call for service. No, we're 24/7, and we need to be responsible for the safety of our community. And to do that means we have to have the right staffing levels. And when I can't hire them or they're just not available to me, then I need to find other avenues. And that would be through overtime, really. I'm sorry, I've talked way too much. I'll take your questions, please. How can I help you?
Sure. Susie, you have a question for our sheriff.
I sure do. In this climate where communities don't seem to be that happy about police presence, how do you train your officers to approach people who seem to have negative feelings about your men and women?
I have a bias. Chief Kazmar and other chiefs will tell you the same. I believe we hire the best and we train the best. That training includes all kinds of diversity training, what I call fork and knife school, really, just how to treat human beings. Naturally, we have to be concerned of our safety and the safety of others around us. And so we just know that we have a model here, and it really does start at the top. I'm constantly reminding my team, and we remind everybody through this department. All you have to do this job is do things right every time. Just do the right thing every time. How hard is that? We all know what the right thing is. I don't need to teach you that. We can teach you how to shoot a gun and how to wrestle a bad guy and how to take a test and all the laws. What I can't teach you is your heart. See, we make mistakes all the time. I say we do the right thing every time, all the time. Trust me, this sheriff makes mistakes every day, but they're always mistakes of the head, never of the heart. And so when we recruit you and bring you on board and hire you, we know you came to us with a good heart. And if you didn't, we will move on from there because we will not tolerate that. I believe maybe I, again, get a biased report on this, but I hear nothing but good about my deputies and how they respond to people, I see it every day. One of our first, when we got our body worn cameras, we wanted transparency. We put that out. The first body worn camera incident we captured was a young deputy out in the street repairing somebody's tire, flat tire for them. That is the image I want for my team, is that we don't just respond to bad guys and arrest people, and we're much more than that. We have a community policing team here that gets involved and engaged. I used to say, man, I really want to do so much in this community. I want to be transparent. We're going to do a citizen advisory board. We're going to do training and diversification. We're going to put together transparency by having body worn cameras on all of our deputies and all of our corrections. We're going to have others investigate those critical incidents so we can step back and allow somebody else to tell us whether we were right or wrong in what we've done. All of those things are important and need to be done, but bottom line is it starts with who I hire and bring in here. If they're of the right heart, they got the right, we can get them trained to treat people like you want to be treated. It's just that simple. We get it. There's going to be times when we're going to be using force, but those times will always be looked at. We will always respond to every single call we get. In today's world, I think we've seen, I just had one, I think the other day I saw San Antonio, 3 officers being arrested with murder charges. I'll knock on wood. You don't see that in Pima County. And there's a reason for it.
Okay. Sandy Sauls, go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question for our sheriff.
Hi, Chris. On the jail, is there any kind of proposed timeline for a bond issue?
So I believe, first of all, let me say this, Jan Lesh, our county manager, she has been for me, a real dream to work with. She's one of those people that has a good heart. She's in it for the right reasons. And she's put together this commission, and she's put a timeline together that is never fast enough for the sheriff. I want it now, but she's realistic. For example, if I could get the board of supervisors to vote 5-0, we could start tomorrow with a tax district, jail tax district, and get funding started right now and start the building of process. The reality is, I don't think we'll ever get a 5-0 vote. Jan looks at reality. I tell Jan, I don't care. I'm going to hold that fire to the feet of this board of supervisors, because I think if every decision I had to make, I went back to the voters for, how would we get things done? I don't think that's what the voters elected me to do. I'm supposed to be able to make those tough decisions. Unfortunately, politics get in the way. The board, I don't think, is going to be there for that. So then it will go to the voters. And that's a process that Jan is still working on, but we can't get there until this commission, the Blue Ribbon Commission, comes up and says, this is my recommendation. Once they make their recommendation, then we'll know. I will say this, though. Every single county in this state, with the exception of Mojave County and Pima County, has a jail district or jail district tax. And that allows you to tax a sales tax for a set period of time. So it has a sunset on it, that those funds can only go for select things, in this case, a jail. To me, that's probably what you're going to see come forward. I think that's the wise way. I think many years ago, we saw a bond go through and it was going to have a substation. And before long, there was literally what started out to be a $200,000 project turned into $1 billion overnight, because everybody, added the pork to it, so to speak. And it just got way out of hand, and the voters turned it down, and I couldn't blame them. This isn't that. This is, I need a jail. And I need it because it's my duty to provide the safest environment for those we detain. And that's also for my staff. The environment we have now is not a safe environment. We have people who are on lockdown 22 out of 24 hours because staffing is bad. I have inmates assaulting inmates. I have inmates assaulting staff at a rate that's increased because of that. You don't have to look far. I think last August, a news article came out of Albuquerque where they built them a new jail, and they were seeing some of the same things we were. Shortage of staff. So staff was now mandated to work overtime. Some 16 hours, some 20-hour days. They were being found falling asleep on the job. I have the same issues. Jail populations increased. So much so you had people sleeping on the floor. I have people sleeping on the floor. We had trash that couldn't be picked up because they couldn't hire custodians. So you had a jail environment that went without maintenance and had trash throughout the place. The place started to smell. They couldn't afford food because of the inflationary costs. And the kitchen was such disarray, they couldn't even prepare food. So they started getting cold food. What does that do for your staff? What does it do to your inmates? Those are serious problems. And I need help to fix those. And I don't think this jail that we currently have is the answer. I think we're going to need a new jail. How much that costs, how it looks, where it's built, those are for experts to tell us. But right now, it's time. Because if I had all the money today to build that jail, it's not going to be built for another 5-10 years. In the meantime, I still have to deal with the flooding problems we have at the jail, deal with the rusted pipes we have, pipes that break, that literally I have 4 elevators that we just replaced about within the last 5 years, that we had pipes burst. Water, if you ever gone to the mall, you'll see those really neat little water features where water falls over the rocks. It looks like a pretty little waterfall. All 4 of my elevator doors were that way. Water was literally falling through the elevators from 4th floor all the way to the bottom. I get leaks in my office, as you do at home sometime, and we put a bucket down until we get it repaired. There, we have bigger than my desk, probably they're wheelbarrow type for laundry, literally 4 feet deep, 3-4 feet across, 6 feet wide on carts. We put that under the leaks at the jail. It fills up like that. That's our monsoon season. The roof, 384,000 square foot roof, is completely destroyed. It needs replacing or repairing. All of these things, toilets and urinals, literally just imagine the usage they get when you have 30,000 inmates go through that jail every day. Every year, 30,000 go through it. Daily, our population keeps rising. Today, we're at 1,804 inmates in my jail. And people say, how many can you sleep in there? How many can I fit? I can fit 2,000, I think almost up to 2,100 beds in that jail. But the reality is you can't, because I have populations that need to be segregated. You can't put a shoplifter in the same jail cell as a homicide suspect. I can't put the hundreds of child molesters and sex crimes individuals in a jail that's not segregated. They need to be kept safe as well. Remember, these are allegations. You're innocent until proven guilty. And so we need to keep them separate, guilty or otherwise, to keep them safe. And so doing that, I may have a jail cell that could sleep 80 people, but I only got 40 people because all 40 of them are homicide people. I can't put the other 40s. So we kind of balance it out. I'm probably getting too much in the weeds for you, but about 80% of your jail to 85% of your jail is what you can deal with before when you deal with classification.
Let's see, we have some questions in the chat room. Larry, would you like to share those?
Yes, by all means. Kat Stratford asks, the employment lag is being felt across the country, but the Pima County Jail has a death rate of approximately 4 times the national average. That's not something occurring in counties with similar staffing shortages. What is being done to address the safety of the inmates?
Well, first of all, that number of 4 times came from one blog reporter, and John and I, Jonathan Washington and I, have spoken about this 100 times. That is an inaccurate number, because here's how it's obtained, and I'll share with you. If you take the national average of deaths in this country, what you do is for a daily rate, or for the annual rate, is you take the number of deaths you have and divide it by your population. So if you had 100 deaths, you divide it by 300 million people, and that would get you your average. And the national average death rate, that's what they call it, is about 4.08 something percent. In our jail, we have some 29 to 30,000 people who go through there annually. I had 1 year, 12 deaths. 1 death is bad enough. But Jonathan, he used the numbers to say he divided the 12 deaths into my daily average, 1,750 some was at the time. So that got those numbers 12 divided by 1,700. I told Jonathan, I said, Jonathan, you took 1,700 of 1 day's population, yet I get literally 30,000 people there a year. The national average is based on annual statistics, not daily statistics. I'm sorry, those numbers would change if you did the math the same way. I'm not a math expert. I don't claim to be, but I'll say this about the deaths in our jail. So I came into our jail, into this office in 2021, and we had always had, remember, I've been here for 40 years prior. We had always, my homicide days back in the early 90s, I used to hate to have to go to the jail. They had a death. You'd do these jail death reports, and it was required by statute by the federal government to report these deaths. But we had what we called jail death review panels. At those panels were the sheriff administration from the jail, the medical examiner's office, the county attorney, and the health care the contractor from the jail. Those people sat there and they reviewed it, and our homicide team, and they reviewed the jail deaths, and they wrote a report and tried to find anything they could do different to make things safer. That was with every single death. For some reason in 2017, those reports, those meetings, that jail death review panel went away. Never had one. So we come in 2021 and we reinstitute them, and we get looking at our deaths. And what we realize is, just like across the nation, COVID was an issue in our jail. We lost that first year 5 people due to COVID. I'm sorry, we're not immune from COVID. It killed millions across this country and millions around the world. Why would you think that your population at your jail would be any different? Particularly when the population wasn't given masks. There were no mandates of any kind. They weren't provided vaccines when they first came out. I was probably the only sheriff I know in the state for sure, but even maybe across this nation, that not only provided vaccines for all of our inmates, we mandated that our staff, every single one of them, get vaccinated. And before then, we shut the jail down, basically stopped any kind of visitation. You wanted visitation, you had to do it on your tablet, on your phone. Every inmate was given a tablet. You wanted an attorney visit, it had to be on the tablet. We locked the jail down. Nobody was coming in. Everybody had to have a mask. Everybody. And you were given masks daily. Those were mandates that this administration put into place, this sheriff. We think they worked because we had those 5 deaths from January 21 through January of 22. On January 28th, we mandated every officer in the place, every employee get vaccinated. I lost 17 corrections officers, which was hard to do because look at our staffing we were getting killed, but I had to make a decision. And that decision was based on one question from one reporter. Sheriff, are you doing everything you can to prevent deaths at your jail?
All right, Sheriff, we have a question from Gene Fisher. He says, I frequently go to the border counties, and I'm curious about how you might be coordinating with your counterparts on immigration issues and other matters of joint concern.
John Modlin, he is the director of Border Patrol here in the Tucson area. John and I talk quite a bit, actually. For a while, it was almost daily. Definitely during the Title 42 end of that issue, we were talking quite a bit, more so than daily. John and I are of the same mindset. Border is a federal issue, just that simple. And John has a budget of literally, the HSI has a budget of over $50 billion. They have over 50,000 agents. John Modlin has the largest number of agents along this border, almost 6,000 agents. He too has a very large operating budget. John doesn't need my help. What John and I agreed to is this. If John needs my help, we'll gladly be there. We've always been there. Our deputies on the street will always back up anybody in a law enforcement uniform. But just as John doesn't want his border patrolmen doing my deputies' jobs, I don't want to be doing John's job. And so, unfortunately, the National Sheriff Association, the major county sheriffs association, the Arizona Sheriff's Association, for whatever reason, my opinion, they've gotten into the politics. I'm not here to play politics. I am not a member of any of those organizations because of that. I will gladly help anyone along the border or in this, as if I'm within reaching distance, I'm going to help you. But I'm not going to do your job for you. And I'm also just not going to play politics. What's going along on our border has been going on. I've lived on that border my entire life. 68 years. I grew up within rock throws of the Rio Grande and used to, with my siblings, play in that river. Years have gone on, and this isn't something for this past administration. This goes back, as far as Krishna is concerned, all the way back 60 some years ago. Every administration, for whatever reason, has decided to politicize what's happening at our border. The shame is there are people down there who are suffering, who really should be the focus. Instead, we'd rather make the focus border security. Cartels are coming across beheading people. All of these crazy ideas. I'm not seeing it. In fact, I would tell you, I worked narcotics for many years. I don't think I've ever seen a cartel member arrested along that border or even in this county or this state. It's not how it works. Do the cartels control drug marketing and all of those things? Absolutely. But to hype it up, to make people fearful that they're invading us, I hope a lot of this country woke up when they saw what happened when 42 ended and we didn't get the mass storms. Actually, what you saw on TV was people lined up to come across. By our own laws, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to, by our laws, turn themselves in to seek asylum. They were doing that. Why would we say that shouldn't happen? Were there a large number of them? Absolutely. But did they remain orderly? Yeah, pretty much, for the most part. To me, the real shame is you all know them. They're in our community. I take my clothes to the dry cleaner, and there's this young lady there. She's one of them. She's working her way through college. Been here since she was 2 years old. DACA. How hard is that to approve? How hard is it to sit back and say, we have people here who contribute to our communities, who pay their taxes, who want nothing more than to be a part of this community, to be a citizen of this nation, and we won't allow it. But I think there's a lot to be said about term limits in Congress, because this has gone on long enough, and there will be no problem. That border will never be fixed, no matter who the sheriff is here, until Congress decides we need to fix our immigration policies. We need to figure out a way to get these people through our process in a shorter time. Why should it take 5, 10 years to be a citizen of this country? And particularly if you went to war for this country. And we all know them. They're at your grocery stores, they're in your dry cleaners, they're in our communities, they're at our restaurants. And these are people who just want to be a part of us. And yet our government, for whatever reason, doesn't. I'm not running for senator or Congress or anything. I just wanted to be sheriff. That's all. Those issues belong elsewhere. Washington needs to solve them.
Sue Heck would like to know, what is your opinion of the upcoming Arizona budget and its effect on your ability to operate? Do you see more privatization in places like the Pima County jails?
No, no, I would. Governor Hobbs and I see eye to eye on so many things. I really am. I hope I'm talking to the choir here. I am so pleased she is our governor. Privatization of any jail is, first of all, we could go on all day about privatization for prisons, but jails particularly, no, I don't see that. Governor Hobbs has helped in a number of ways in terms of budgetary issues, such as retaining officers. The state gave $10,000 to every police officer that's in the streets for the next year or two. Here's $10,000 to keep you here in Arizona. I think you've seen the billboards around town. Albuquerque's paying $15,000 to come and sign up, and other communities are. I won't do that. I don't want to recruit outside of Tucson. I think you get a better officer, deputy, when they're from your region, because they have an investment. Their family's here, they're here, they live here, they play here, they work here. They're a part of this community. And so I see that as a value. But to give us that retention money at $10,000 a man was awesome. They have to stay here for X number of years to commit to that. So they're getting it. What happened though, the state gave $10,000. My county board of supervisors took that, said, yes, we'll take that and give it to the deputies. Good. But all the benefits and pension and insurances and all of those, what we call EREs, employee related expenses, came out of my budget. No funding from the board at all. We just gave 7.5% pay raises to my corrections officers and corrections sergeants in January. That was awesome. But I got no funding for it. So I paid that out of my budget. There has to be a better way to run a budget. I hope that on the 11th, when I speak to the board, maybe they can figure it out. Maybe they can come up with a better plan. They're bigger brains than I'm sure, who can look at how we do things. And it's the way we've done things for decades. I just question the logic behind it. You can't give a budget and then not fund it. It makes no sense.
Last question from Andrea Kennedy. So Andrea, unmute yourself. And what's your question for Sheriff Nanos?
Hi, this is out of your area, but I wondered if as a law enforcement officer, there was video that came from Uvalde, the two officers that initially responded fast. They ran toward the danger in the door, and then a few minutes later, they came out again. And if someone on the news has asked them, why did you come out? So maybe you've heard something or you had some thoughts, because it's not like they didn't go in there.
And I'm probably at the same disadvantage as you. What I saw a video from what I've been briefed on from other outlets. The first responders responded to the area, the hallway where the classroom door was, where this individual had locked himself in. The shooter had locked himself in. They went no further. They backed out because they knew he had an AR-15 platform type weapon that could dispense some pretty heavy firepower. And the only thing they were armed with was their handgun. I understand that, man, nobody wants to be in that kind of gunfight. But you took an oath of office. I don't get to say, I'm going to go to the ones that are not dangerous, and the ones that are dangerous, I'm going to sit back and wait. Sometimes we do, but not in that incident. Not in that, when I'm pulling a trigger every second. We talk about minutes, right? If I get a call to respond to your house for a burglary or any number of family fight, if my team gets there in under 5 minutes, that's a fast response time. But I can't, every minute counts in those cases. But when somebody's at a school shooting people who are, these are our most vulnerable. And they're, yeah, you just can't do that. And we have to respond. From what I saw, there was no direct confrontation of the threat. They got to the door and backed off. And that's, I don't know how to answer that. It is scary for those young officers. I get it, but.
So how about an AR-15 type weapons ban?
So you're speaking to my political heart. Okay. I'm a firm believer people are going to think I'm crazy. I think the only people who should have guns are policemen. I just do, because when I was growing up as a young kid, there were 10 in my family, and my mom wouldn't get us 5 boys a BB gun because we would put somebody's eye out. When I was 20 years old, I joined the police force and I couldn't buy bullets. My mom had to go buy bullets. I just am not a fan of guns. I think more guns bring more problems. Yeah, I understand it. There's hunting and there's target shooting and there's a great recreation area. But you know what? Why can't we at least just get to that common area? How about something that says, hey, if you've been designated as somebody who suffers from mental health issues, you shouldn't have a weapon. So we're gonna put something out. We have it. The system exists that says you can just background checks, general background checks. And why can an 18-year-old go and buy an assault weapon, but he can't buy bullets or a handgun? This is crazy stuff. And I'm sorry. Nobody can share any data that says pre-73, when we said no assault weapons. Just find one area, common ground. Congress, find that one area and let's work on it. And it just can't happen. Again, here in Pima County, moms demand action. Miss Taylor Green, who lost her little one on our January 8th incident, we sat there and saw that. How hard is it for our board to say, you're not going to sell, you cannot sell weapons at a county fairground. You're not going to do that, but they won't. They let the politics play in there and decided we can't do that. Sure you can. The city council won a lawsuit saying they have the right to stop you from selling weapons without background checks on the city grounds at the TCC. So why can't we do that at the fairgrounds? Do you know what they showed me at the fairgrounds? They do this. They have signs back of the trunk of a car. There's a sign. No background checks. Who are they saying that to? They're telling the bad guy, you can buy from me. We don't check your back. How is that responsible? I am so adamant against guns. I don't know what to tell you, but that's just my belief.
Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your passion. We really appreciate you, Sheriff.
Thank you very much, but I owe you all an apology because I'm just probably all over the map. There's so much in this head, but you're welcome to text me or call me. And if I seem like I was off on one tangent or another, please let me know. We have filed our paperwork for the next election. So I'm going to be looking at you and others for a lot of help on this. Hopefully look at what we've done and accomplished and not what we're promising to do and accomplish. I think my team has done a lot, and I hope that's good enough for you to say, we're going to give Sheriff Nanos another try. If not, I'm okay with that too. I thank you for this great opportunity you've given me already. Thank you.
Have a great 4th of July, and thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate you.